Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at what happens when modern, rigorous critical thinking collides head-on with traditional societal expectations.
Yeah, it's a really intense collision.
It really is. And we have a genuinely fascinating source on the table for you today. It's an excerpted transcript from a 2025 open forum in Bengaluru.
Right, featuring Acharya Prashant.
Exactly, Acharya Prashant. He's this modern philosophical and spiritual teacher. And, usually when a prominent public figure faces allegations like running a cult or financial fraud or breaking up homes, you see a very predictable playbook.
Oh, totally. The PR team steps in immediately.
Right. The script is heavily curated, the questions are completely pre-screened, and it's all about this, safe, sanitized damage control.
It's the standard defensive posture. You build a fortress around the narrative, and you just refuse to let any unapproved voices inside.
But what we're analyzing in this transcript is the exact opposite of that playbook. I mean, we are looking at a public figure walking onto a stage, essentially pointing at his harshest, most vocal critics in the crowd, and just inviting them to take their best shot on an open microphone.
Yeah, it really reads like an intellectual roast.
It does, but the stakes are incredibly high. So, the goal for our deep dive today is to really unpack the anatomy of these arguments. We're going to look closely at how he handles these real-world allegations.
Because when you strip away the immediate controversy, his defenses actually reveal so much about the underlying psychology of our society.
Right. It exposes our deep-seated insecurities regarding tradition, how we view money in the context of spirituality, and what it actually means to be personally liberated.
And that's really where the value lies for you, the listener. We get to step back and act as completely impartial observers here.
Exactly. We are not taking sides. We aren't here to validate or invalidate the claims. We're just here to dissect the mechanics of how a society attacks a disruptive thinker and, how that thinker dismantles those attacks.
So we should probably jump straight into the most visible, tangible controversy from the source text.
The massive crowds.
Yeah.
We really need to talk about the crowds.
Yeah. The transcript specifically details this event called the Pune Lead Fest.
The imagery there is just striking. It says people were queuing up for kilometers.
Just to shake his hand.
Right. We're talking about an ocean of humanity standing in line for hours for a brief moment to just say hello. And naturally, when the public sees thousands of people lining up for one person, the immediate accusation is, look at that personality worship. That is a cult.
Right. It's the fastest label society reaches for when it sees mass devotion outside of, a pop concert or a sports stadium.
Oh, absolutely.
But what's structurally fascinating is how he immediately deconstructs the fundamental definition of a cult.
He really tears it apart.
He does. He points out that a cult operates on a highly specific psychological and economic model. Like a true cult requires the promise of miracles.
Right. It thrives on fulfilling worldly desires, granting wishes, or offering some secret shortcut to immense wealth or political power.
It's a transactional model of spirituality. You give me your devotion, and I will magically fix your failing business or cure your illness.
But his defense is that he offers absolutely none of those things. I mean, zero.
None. There are no miracles, no magical interventions, no promises of lottery winnings. Instead, he describes his entire body of work as this rigorous intellectual clearing of cobwebs.
So the critics naturally follow up. If there are no miracles being handed out, why on earth are thousands of people standing in a kilometer-long line?
And his explanation is rooted in something much simpler, which is just genuine, overwhelming gratitude.
He actually argues that lacking gratitude is a profound moral failure. Let me frame this with an analogy for you, the listener. Think about hiring a personal trainer.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. If you hire someone who just smiles, gives you a donut, and tells you that you look great, you might feel good in the moment, but you stay entirely out of shape.
Yeah, you haven't actually accomplished anything.
Exactly. Now, imagine you hire a trainer who pushes you to the point of absolute physical exhaustion. They force you to break your bad habits. You might actually hate them during the workout.
Oh, definitely.
But a year later, when you are the healthiest you've ever been, you feel this immense sense of gratitude. Going back to think that trainer isn't blind worship, it's the receipt for actual painful results.
That perfectly captures the mechanism of the trust we're seeing here. In the transcript, the critics use the term andhabhakti.
Which means blind faith or blind devotion, right?
Exactly. But he rejects that entirely. Instead, he leans heavily into a rigorous academic defense. He explicitly challenges the critics by asking them to compare his organization to top-tier universities.
Like Harvard or Wharton.
Right. He says if Harvard or the Wharton School were to launch a highly demanding program that synthesizes ancient philosophies with modern existentialism, society would immediately respect it as elite academia.
And take a second to contextualize what he's actually teaching, too. The text mentions he brings in Vedanta, which is the ancient philosophical foundation of Hinduism dealing with the ultimate nature of reality. And he fuses it with very modern, rigorous critical thinking.
Yeah, and he backs up this academic comparison with staggering logistical data. The source notes that his institution conducts 157 written exams every single month.
Wait, 157 exams a month?
A month. And they host these massive marathon educational workshops that last for hours. It far exceeds the stamina required for, like, a standard 50-minute university lecture.
Wow. So he's making the case that his community is actually engaging in far more academic rigor than traditional universities.
Exactly. But because it happens outside the ivy-covered brick walls of a sanctioned university, society gets deeply suspicious.
Which creates a natural friction point. Because if we accept the premise that this is a high-level academic and philosophical institution, we immediately hit a wall of economic reality.
Right, because top-tier institutions require top-tier funding.
Exactly. And the moment a philosopher handles millions of rupees, the public screams fraud.
Always follow the money. That is the universal rule of public skepticism.
It really is. The critics in the text bring up this age-old expectation. If this work is genuinely spiritual or philosophical, shouldn't it be completely free?
Yeah, they really press him on that.
They even throw in a bit of dramatic flair, citing this public astrologer's prediction that Acharya Prashant will be exposed as a massive financial fraudster in the year 2028.
The way he handles that 2028 prophecy is just brilliant.
It's so funny.
Because he doesn't counter it with mysticism. He counters it with an exhausting logistical reality. He basically laughs it off and says he simply does not have the time to orchestrate a grand financial heist.
He outlines a daily routine that is grueling to the point of absurdity. He's awake working, writing, and teaching until 3:00 a.m.
And he details the severe physical toll it takes on his body. The transcript mentions him arriving at his center, Bostal, late at night, completely exhausted, just to lead a session.
Yeah, he talks about conducting these intense philosophical breakdowns while in severe physical agony. He mentioned suffering from a frozen shoulder for 2 years.
Which he actually exacerbated by playing squash.
Right. He admits he played the game with too much brute force and not enough fluid movement, leading to this debilitating injury where he couldn't even button his own shirt or comb his hair.
And yet he describes throwing a kurta over his sweaty squash clothes just to ensure he didn't miss a scheduled session with his students.
So the underlying argument is highly practical. Like, when exactly, between the 3 a.m. work nights and the physical therapy, am I supposed to be plotting a master fraud?
Right. It's just a time management issue.
But I want to pause and look critically at the money itself, though, on behalf of you, the listener. Because the text explicitly mentions that there are employees in his organization taking home corporate-level salaries.
Very high salaries.
Specifically citing packages of 1 crore rupees. Like, hold on a second. A 1 crore salary for a spiritual nonprofit. That breaks the entire societal archetype of the monk with a begging bowl.
It really does.
How does he justify competing with corporate giants for talent without tainting the philosophical mission?
Well, his argument is that the societal archetype of the penniless guru is exactly what keeps philosophy marginalized and powerless.
Oh, that's interesting.
He argues that the public's demand for spiritual poverty ignores the brutal reality of modern information distribution. He makes a crucial distinction. The words themselves, the philosophy, are absolutely free.
Right. If you sit in front of him, the teaching costs nothing.
Exactly. But distributing those words across a massive country like India and pushing them globally, that costs millions. Algorithms do not care about your spiritual purity.
They really don't. Social media platforms like YouTube and Facebook demand immense capital to push content through the daily noise of the internet.
And he points out the sheer server costs alone. The Zoom data charges for hosting thousands of students on marathon video meetings are astronomical.
So if you want to compete with the corporate world for a fraction of human attention, you need top-tier talent. You need brilliant engineers, data analysts, and media managers.
And in the modern tech industry, that talent is incredibly expensive. If he pays an engineer a fraction of what they could make at an IT firm, the digital infrastructure collapses.
And then the mission fails because the reach just disappears. So that 1 crore salary isn't a luxury, it's necessary ammunition in a global war for attention.
Right. And regarding his personal wealth, the text lays out a very clear firewall. He states he does not take a salary from the donation money.
Even though he is legally entitled to as the head of the organization.
Exactly. His personal life is funded through alternative, independent streams, like royalties from his published books and a physical property, Bojtal, which is given to him by his father.
Meanwhile, the organization itself undergoes voluminous, strict financial audits. He describes shipping massive boxes of audited reports to the government, tracking every minor 500 rupee donation.
He's essentially daring anyone to find a single crack in their accounting.
But, the moment you establish that kind of structural and financial independence, it breeds personal independence in the people listening to you.
And that is exactly what triggers the most explosive accusations in the entire transcript.
This is where the friction hits the social fabric in a very uncomfortable way. The accusations shift from institutional skepticism to deeply personal anger.
We're talking about allegations shouted from the crowd that he is a homewrecker.
Yeah. Husbands are claiming he's ruining their women, actively breaking marriages, and stopping young people from getting married altogether.
It's a massive escalation. But his counter-argument is razor sharp, and it forces us to look at the sociology of a traditional household. He says he isn't breaking homes, he's breaking prisons.
That is a heavy distinction. Let's dig into the mechanics of that. Why does a husband feel so threatened when his wife starts listening to philosophy?
Because traditional power dynamics often rely on the unquestioning compliance of one partner.
Right.
He directly addresses the husbands who complain their wives have been ruined. He points out that if a husband feels his marriage is falling apart simply because his wife gains awareness, or as he puts it, gains wings and an independent voice, then that husband was essentially treating his wife like tied-up cattle.
He uses this incredible metaphor in the text. He says if a mere knock of truth on the front door makes a house collapse, then that house was structurally built on lies and it deserved to fall.
Yeah, that's a powerful way to frame it.
And he actually highlights the absurdity of the accusation with a great visual joke. He pictures himself flying a fighter jet or riding a bulldozer, a JCB, across India, hunting down marriages to destroy them one by one.
Which is ridiculous, obviously.
It perfectly highlights how absurd it is to blame an external philosopher for the internal fragility of a relationship.
It forces you, the listener, to ask a very uncomfortable question about your own life. If learning something new, if gaining a broader perspective makes you question your relationships, is the new knowledge dangerous, or was the relationship being held together by ignorance to begin with?
Right. If the truth breaks it, was it a home or was it a hostage situation?
Exactly. And regarding the accusation that he actively stops people from getting married, he clarifies the limits of his role.
Right. He emphasizes that he has absolutely no power over anyone's personal choices. He isn't a dictator issuing life edicts.
His entire goal, according to the text, is to bring the individual to a state of deep conscious awareness, a state he refers to as hosh.
Hosh, yeah.
He explains that he doesn't care about the physical action of marriage. He cares entirely about the state of mind of the person entering into it.
He explicitly says that if you reach that grounded center of awareness, and from that clear place you choose to marry, he fully supports it. I think he even jokes that you can marry 6 times if you're doing it with full conscious awareness.
Yeah, he does. But that level of unapologetic disruption, bluntly telling people their marriages might be prisons, naturally feels abrasive.
Which perfectly explains the next set of accusations we see in the text. The crowd accuses him of being bitter, of being profoundly disrespectful to ancient traditions, and of harboring bias against specific religions.
Because people generally want their spiritual teachers to have, a customer service voice. They want soothing, sweet affirmations.
But his philosophical stance on his own tone is fascinating. He argues that sweetness, which is pleasant to the ear but corrupts the mind, is actually a poison.
Right.
Bitterness that cleanses the mind is necessary medicine. Truth naturally tastes bitter to a lie.
And that framework of necessary bitterness ties directly into how he views tradition. The crowd accuses him of disrespecting the past. His response is entirely logical. Just because something is old does not mean it's inherently good or useful.
He introduces the concept of vivek.
Right, which translates to deep critical discernment. He believes that blindly accepting the traditions of the past without running them through your own vivek is a fundamental insult to your own human intelligence.
He just refuses to let his students be hostages to history. Which brings us to a highly charged political trap laid out in the open forum.
Oh, this part is intense.
The questioner demands to know, why do you only criticize the traditions of Hinduism? Why don't you criticize other religions like Islam or Christianity?
And from a purely analytical standpoint, watching how he navigates this trap is a masterclass in dismantling whataboutism.
It's the ultimate deflection tactic. When someone doesn't like the critique they're receiving, they point at someone else and say, well, what about them?
Exactly. His defense relies on this brilliant doctor analogy. It says, a doctor treats the specific disease of the patient sitting in the examination room right in front of them.
If a patient comes into the clinic suffering from cancer, the doctor does not prescribe tuberculosis medicine, just to be fair to all the diseases in the world.
Right. The cognitive dissonance of the audience here is just amazing. They're demanding equal opportunity criticism when they are the ones who need the treatment.
Yeah, and he explains that he is speaking primarily to majority Hindu audiences in India. They are the patients physically sitting in front of him. Therefore, he addresses their specific cultural, societal, and religious issues.
And he notes that if a Muslim audience comes to him seeking clarity, he addresses their specific contextual issues.
And he provides evidence that he isn't holding back either. He points out that when he travels to Europe or when he hosted myth demolition tours in Rishikesh with Western audiences, he actively and fiercely critiques Christian texts and beliefs.
He is simply treating the ailment of the demographic in the room.
Think about how you consume criticism in your own life. When someone points out a flaw in your behavior, do you absorb it, or do you immediately deflect by pointing out the flaws of your neighbors?
It is so much easier to demand the doctor treats someone else than to swallow the bitter medicine yourself.
It really is. He simply refuses to let the audience off the hook. And this unapologetic stance ties into the final accusation we see in the transcript, that he is fame-hungry.
The critics say, you just want to be famous like all the other gurus.
And his response completely flips the premise. He essentially says, yes, I absolutely want fame, but you are completely missing the mechanics of why.
He freely admits his desire for massive reach, but he redefines the purpose of that fame. He argues that becoming a massive cultural force is necessary to hijack the public consciousness away from trivial, mind-numbing distractions.
Right. He points out that the daily newspapers and social media feeds are completely saturated with pointless celebrity gossip, political theater, and consumerism that actively distract people from the real issues of their lives.
He makes the point that someone's name is going to be in the headlines today. Someone is going to dominate the algorithm.
If it isn't him, it's going to be someone peddling absolute nonsense. So yes, he aggressively pursues fame because he genuinely believes his message serves the world better than the noise.
He actually challenges the critics, suggesting they shouldn't be attacking his fame. They should be actively demanding he gets more of it to counteract the cultural rot.
It's a phenomenal reframing of ambition. Like, ambition isn't a sin if the goal is mass liberation.
Exactly.
So let's bring all these threads together. We started this deep dive by looking at a public figure walking into an open forum, facing an avalanche of societal anger.
And throughout this text, we have seen how he navigates that public outrage, not by issuing sanitized apologies, but by completely reframing the core definitions of the accusations.
He forces the audience to look in the mirror. Cults are reframed as rigorous, gratitude-driven universities.
Financial fraud is reframed as the necessary corporate-level transparency required to fight modern algorithm wars.
Home wrecking becomes the necessary, painful breaking of psychological prisons.
And a bitter, angry tone becomes the life-saving medicine for a society choking on sweet lies.
It really forces you to ask whether your own core beliefs are built on unshakable truth, or if they are just comfortable habits that would collapse the moment a bulldozer of critical thinking knocked on your front door.
Which brings up a really fascinating paradox about the nature of this kind of work.
It does. It leaves us with one final, provocative thought to mull over. Something that wasn't explicitly debated in the source text, but sits right beneath the surface of everything we've discussed today.
What's that?
Well, if a philosophical teacher's ultimate goal is to make their students completely independent, deeply aware, and entirely free from all psychological prisons, what happens to the massive million-dollar institution once the students finally wake up.
Oh, wow. I mean, a truly successful doctor eventually cures all their patients and puts themselves out of business?
Right. Does the ultimate success of this philosophical mission actually require the total destruction of the institution itself? If everyone achieves that state of hosh, of profound awareness, the kilometer-long lines disappear.
The million-dollar Zoom servers go perfectly quiet.
It is an incredible problem to have.
The ultimate goal of the institution is its own obsolescence.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning the structures of the world around you, and the next time you see someone standing in front of a microphone taking the heat, ask yourself if you're watching a roast or the beginning of a revolution. We'll catch you next time.